I want to know your journey because I was reading about your post, and one quote you said was, "My parents were skeptical about my decision to become a lawyer, and they thought that it was something that only white and Jewish people did in those days." So, could you just share some light? What happened? How did you get into law? With the opposition of your parents as well.
Oh, yeah. So in many, many decades ago, the ethnic landscape in Canada was much, much different when I was a child. So there was maybe a small trickle.
And I've seen this a lot of times, specifically people who have basically studied in Canada before. Sometimes they come back. A lot of consultants say, "Okay, we are going to give you, or we're gonna offer you a job."
Yeah. So I see this often at the tail end when the damage has been done, where they are promised guaranteed immigration.
Hello, everyone. So, welcome to my podcast today with Mr. Max Chaudhary, who is current executive chair at Ontario Bar Association. Also, he's one of the top choice, runs a top choice immigration law firm in North York. He has been featured multiple times. He's a speaker for professional legal associations and have been contributing in various issues for CTV News and other things. So, welcome, Mr. Max Chaudhary. I really like you having me join in for this conversation today.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right. So, one of the things we want to start, I want to know your journey because I was reading about your post, and one quote you said was, "My parents were skeptical about my decision to become a lawyer, and they thought that it was something that only white and Jewish people did in those days." So, could you just share some light? What happened? How did you get into law? With the opposition of your parents as well at that time.
Oh, yeah. So in many, many decades ago, the ethnic landscape in Canada was much, much different when I was a child. So there was maybe a small trickle of South Asian people at that time, maybe a few Caribbean people at that time. So that was the environment, and my parents did not have skilled or white collar jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So, and in those days, I mean, there were still in Toronto, there were still factory jobs to assemble things and create things like paper bags and appliances.
Yeah.
So there was a clear demarcation in the types of jobs you can do. So if your parents, as mine were mother was not really educated past secondary school, and father had maybe some textile training in Pakistan, from what I recall.
Right.
And that was the basis for him to immigrate here more than 50 years ago to Canada. So when I became at that age, when it was university, and I said I wanted to pursue a field in law, it was such an alien concept to them.
Mm-hmm.
And they only saw what was sort of the norm back then, and which was namely just white people and Jewish people. And indeed, when I entered law school, I looked at the previous graduating classes, and I maybe saw 2 East Asian people in the past 4 or 5 years in the pictures. Maybe one or 2 or 3 black people.
Right.
And in my own class, I think there was me and 2 other South Asian people and maybe 3 East Asian people, maybe 4 out of 110 people. So it was still a bit odd, demographically speaking, right? So When I told my father I wanted to pursue a law career, he had this response saying, "Well," he told an anecdote, a recent one at the time, saying his one of his customers, because he was into air conditioning and heating repair. One of his customers said her son tried to apply to law school and could not get in, and he became a manager at a store selling shoes. So not a lot of encouragement
Yeah.
there, right? So, but I at that time I did not have any affinity for mathematics or science for whatever reason. So there was not much else to pursue, right? In those days, right? Because then accounting and medicine and all those jobs are not really available to you.
Yeah,
uh,
definitely.
yeah. So that was the decision. The pathway was kind of restricted based on my aptitudes. So I think with South Asian parents, especially back then, before you could discover, before you could make a living doing information technology,
Hmm.
then I think the gold standards was being a doctor, right?
Yeah, and that is
It's
still true.
always, it's probably still true, right?
Yeah.
So, and there was no proliferation of IT jobs where people could make lots of money
Yeah.
in those days.
Yeah.
So that was the ideal for my parents, and they thought, well, this is not. This is well. I mean, they in their mind they thought, well, what is a lawyer or like a vakil in the old country, right? It's usually part of. This is what I'm understanding what they thought a lawyer was, which is that they're not particularly honest, and
Yeah.
it's an easy to get,
Yeah.
and the whole system is sort of like a showpiece that pretends to be just. I think that was their impression. So, and so they think you have to be very quick-witted and very loose with your ethics.
Yeah.
And they didn't
Definitely.
think I was, yeah, they didn't think I was that type of person, right? So,
Exactly. So even today in Pakistan, India, Bangladesh,
mhm,
I think it's the same case. Lawyers are looked down um, because I think there's a lot of malpractice happening. But one
mhm.
of the things that has intrigued me is why did you specifically choose immigration law as your primary, field?
So in those days, immigration law wasn't a huge component of the law. I mean, it existed,
Hmm.
but not very many lawyers. I think nowadays, I believe the amount of lawyers and or licensed consultants might be
Hmm.
quite a bit, maybe either 1,200 or 2,400. That might be combining the
Hmm.
two in Canada, who are licensed in Canada.
Yeah.
In maybe, from what I understand, based on what older lawyers told me
Hmm.
before my time, sometime there was maybe only like 50
Mm-hmm.
in the bar association dealing with immigration, and I mean
Okay.
that probably mushroomed a bit right later by the
Hmm.
time I was, but it is not like it is now. So I happen to have the choice to article or apprentice with either a real estate lawyer or
Hmm.
an immigration lawyer, and I thought, well, with the real estate, it seems very. It was much more of a traditional, much more largely proliferated
Yeah.
uh, job. So I thought, well, this seems a bit too common. So I just opted for immigration based
Yeah.
on the person I articled with.
Right. So, in those early days, a lot of times I see posts, I go on Reddit, I talk to lawyers, and they're always like young lawyers are very stressed out. They can't find good retainers. Sometimes they have a lot of, work, admin work they do. In those days when you started your own law firm, which is now one of the best in Toronto, what was the first year look like, and what did you do to get your first few clients and gain that trust?
So for that time, uh, there was there was no licensing of immigration
Hmm.
consultants yet.
Hmm.
So it was sort of like the Wild West for that, right? There were lawyers were obviously regulated, but there weren't that many lawyers.
Hmm.
Uh, the amount of governance and discipline
Hmm.
that the Canadian Immigration Department had in those days was naive and not so comprehensive. The enforcement
Yeah.
mechanisms. So there was the ability to just be acquainted with just the fact with my surname Chaudhary. Then there's you just find out that there are uh, some immigration consultants, and back then
Yeah.
they were not licensed. And then I liaised with them,
Hmm.
tried to find the ethical ones,
Yeah.
and then built a sort of system where we understood that there were cases they simply could not
Hmm.
do because you had to go to court, but
Yeah.
you had to be a lawyer, so they could not do those. And similarly, the person I worked with,
Hmm.
he was retiring, so he gave me. Luckily, he just gave me like 5 litigation cases.
Right.
So just happenstance, basically. Right?
So, do you think at that time, did you ever think I could do multiple, cases or in different fields, maybe real estate law with immigration? Or do you think that, okay, one niche is good for me and I think I can be best at one thing rather than doing so many other things altogether?
Yeah, I was because the training I had was only at an immigration law firm.
Hmm.
It was not the training that you would get at a large firm where
Hmm.
you would have rotations in different types of
Hmm.
law.
Hmm.
So I had to basically face that fact that after the 1 year of articling, I only had the immigration training. So
Hmm.
it kind of forced me to focus on that
Hmm.
and not really look back after that.
Right, right. So today, when you have built a firm, and obviously there's a big, hard work that you've done on that. A lot of people find it very difficult to balance out the legal work and how to manage a full-time running business. How do you balance that? And a lot of times you have to do the admin work. Sometimes there are leads coming. Sometimes you have to qualify them, and then I actually, when I called your office, I was actually routed towards an AI, which I talked to initially. And how did you come up with all those things to streamline the process and get that time back that you can bill?
In these days, it's like you mentioned, like in the current environment, there seems to be like rapid change in the types of innovations
Hmm.
related to repetitive analytical tasks.
Hmm.
Dealing with, I mean, words, right? Which is, in a sense, in the global sense, that's what
Yeah.
lawyers are doing. So now there is these. This is sort of the next stage, it seems, of automation, whereas before it was simply the innovation. Maybe 30 years ago
Hmm.
was simply sending email
Yeah.
instead of a typewriter and then an envelope and a stamp
Hmm.
and then or fax machine, which did cost a lot for long distance because you'd be charged long distance.
Right.
So even faxes were a little bit prohibitive if your
Hmm.
clientele was not local.
Hmm.
So nowadays, it seems everything, which I think was probably by design, under the rubric or the guise of efficiency,
Hmm.
what that really means is just everything is just moving faster and faster.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So before we move on to how students are gonna, uh, I'm sorry about that. All right. So before we move on to the next set of questions, I wanna just in a one-liner, if somebody who's a young lawyer, he wants to, start his own firm, what would be your best advice to that person in today's time?
If they want to start their own law firm,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
So in this environment, it's good, I think, to have some affinity with maybe even some rudimentary computer programming, right? Just because then you can communicate with service providers who can, who these days, if those are mushrooming, then they're trying to sell you things related to productivity based on software of some sort or other. And so if you know the terminology they're using, that's advantageous. And it seems like everything else these days, everything is getting specialized. So based on the would-be lawyer's practice, they have to look at what is their skill set and affinity. So for example, do they like the complexity associated with a corporate transaction, like purchasing a business by assets or shares, or real estate, as opposed to the more discretionary types of law, like criminal or immigration, where you're dealing with really the various parties' perceptions of the human condition. So, I mean, that's a very broad statement, but what I mean is that, like, you're dealing with your clients, they're telling you a story, and then they might be a would-be refugee or an aspiring study permit holder. And then you have to put yourself in the shoes of the immigration officer or the criminal judge and say, is this credible or plausible? It's bordering on determining if there is a realistic narrative, which again, I mean, that's sort of like a distant cousin of storytelling, right?
Yeah.
Is this person's story true, right? The difference, though, with lawyers is that there is a legal framework that we have to adhere to. So then we have to pick and choose what is relevant and not relevant to justify whether a study permit could be issued or whether this person should be deported based on criminal activity. Have they rehabilitated themselves? So if the person has an affinity for one or the other, the more discretionary aspects such as immigration law or deportation law or criminal law, and if they can try to learn to be a judge of character, and with experience, a judge of what is a set of credible documents or a study permit, then, and if they feel they can do that on a repetitive basis, then that would be a good practice, right?
Yeah, definitely. So a lot of our audience is from GCC, and they do IGCSEs and A levels. So, and a lot of them want to move to Canada for studying. What do you think is a strong study permit application look like today compared to a few years ago?
So these days, now if the person already has A levels, then their next logical step, based on their age and education accumulated, would be, college or university. Years ago, a college was fine up until maybe 2022, because there was the proliferation of many types of colleges. There was this concept of some kind of partnership between an official college and like a newer college. But that partnership, I think, was being abused. So then there were too many of these colleges affiliated with a licensed college. As a consequence, that led to too many students being here. There were too many programs of a generic nature.
Right.
The programs were generic because the pathways for permanent residency did not specify a particular course of study, but rather a particular level of study.
Right.
So everybody was doing, I mean, I'm generalizing, but they were doing like e-commerce and, these sort of white collar jobs because the pipeline for immigration was straightforward. But then with the reforms in 2025, at the beginning of the year, they started restricting the study permits. So practically speaking, there was no restrictions if you were studying, let's say, elementary school or secondary school. But now they were placing de facto restrictions on people studying something generic, like maybe accounting, e-commerce, and even and then with the loss of jobs in IT, the lack of available jobs, they were shedding jobs in 2024.
Yeah.
So this led to changes about the end process for permanent residency. The end process in around May 2024 started to say, well, PR, permanent residency, will be granted only in targeted occupations. So then people who had studied from 2022 and 2023 in occupations like accounting and things like that, hotel management, was no longer a guaranteed pathway.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, for them. That was the problem. So now we look at 2026 and they're putting more emphasis on people with master's and PhD admissions.
Right.
That's sort of lay of the land now.
And that too in specific areas, or that's also like a bit open right now rather than the bachelor's?
So technically now, it seems to be open as long as it's master's or PhD. People, in some cases, in theory, you could pursue a bachelor's degree, but you have to have a keen eye on what are the targeted occupations under express entry now in 2026. And then try to anticipate or tailor your proposed bachelor study to what is in demand in the Canadian labor market for, let's say, if you're starting 2026, what will be in demand in 2028? Because more and more they will restrict the work permits for people entering university as study permit holders now.
So these students, say the process previously was simpler, it was easier. Now, if they want to apply, let's suppose they do have studied about a particular degree that they can take in bachelor's. What do you think are very common reasons other than the field of study that might lead to visa refusal for these students?
So these days, if it's a would-be bachelor's degree study permit holder trying to enter Canada, then the concerns of the officer are, is this particular program available in their country or in a country that is not as far away as Canada?
Right.
So that's one concern to keep in mind for this. Other ones are, if there's a previous history of refusal as well.
Okay. And who do you think, because a lot of consultants promise a lot of stuff. They say, okay, we are going to get you the admissions and then the visa process. Do you think consulting a lawyer in immigration is more important these days than consultants, or do consultants give the right information or enough information that students can take and take action upon?
So, I mean, we have to be fair and realistic. So if you come across an experienced lawyer who has processed these study permits, and by the same token, if you've come across a licensed, experienced consultant, in theory, they should be ostensibly on the same playing field for the purpose of whether or not they have sufficient expertise for filing a study permit. And I think it goes without saying that, I mean, if the person you're dealing with is not licensed in any capacity, then it's extremely dangerous.
Right. And is there a way for students that you can tell that they can check which lawyer or which education consultant is licensed in Canada, so they might, prevent scams from happening?
Yeah, so in the Canadian context, lawyers are licensed by the province, so that each province has its own sort of registry for lawyers. And licensed immigration consultants are licensed nationally, and they have the designation RCIC, and I think it's Registered Canadian Immigration Consultant, I believe.
Right, right. And one of this, the kids who are coming from either GCC or Pakistan or India, usually what they have is they think, okay, we're gonna go there, we're gonna work, and then we can, earn some extra cash on the side. What is allowed and what is not allowed, and what can get them in trouble if they try to do that while they're studying in Canada?
So as of now, I mean, it does fluctuate, but I believe as of now, while they have a study permit, they can work for, I believe, 24 hours a week. And typically when they have the traditional break, they should be able to work full time on the current regime. This has varied. I mean, at one point it was 20 hours a week. So this does vary from time to time.
Right. And are there any restrictions, like if they want to work, they can work within the campus or off campus, or is it open for just if they log in 20 hours a week?
Yeah, many years ago it was restricted only to on campus, and then I believe 2015 it was open
Okay.
in terms of where you could work. Yeah.
Right. Now, when let's suppose a person graduates, right? So they would want to go towards a work permit. So what are the ways to get a work permit? Who to consult at that time? And is there like a sort of transition that can be like done within the country, or they have to leave the country and come back? So these are some questions that I wanted to put forward.
So in the work permit regime for graduates of Canadian universities, they don't have to do the normal thing, which is to apply outside of Canada. They can apply for the post-graduation work permit if they have the new requirements, typically a language facility. And perhaps in the next couple of years, it might be the case that they need to have a certain course of study to graduate and apply for a work permit while inside of Canada after graduating.
And is it important today that in Canada, obviously, a lot of people speak French? Do you think it's an advantage for students to learn French on the side to have better work opportunities when they graduate?
Definitely. The 3-year plan announced in November 2025 said the federal government wants to maintain and encourage French-speaking immigrants to come to Canada. So if you have an affinity for languages, the point draws under the express entry have even reached like the high 300s, whereas the norm for the points is something around 525 or 545.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. So, my question here is that let's suppose a guy has learned French, he has basically graduated. Now, this person has to get a job offer before he can apply for a work permit, or is there a duration when he can apply and then look for jobs? How does it work for students after they graduate?
So the norm right now is that if the course of study was more than 2 years,
Hmm.
and if they have the right language amount,
Hmm.
and they meet the requirements for graduation,
Hmm.
and file the work permit within 180 days of graduation,
Hmm.
then they could file for the work permit. Again, this may change in 1 or 2 years based on
Hmm.
occupation, or sorry, based on educational
Hmm.
achieved
Hmm.
educational assessment. Right?
Right.
Mhm.
And do you think certain provinces' choices are more important, or a program is more important these days for, moving permanently or getting a permanent residence once they get the work permit?
So there is a sort of fundamental commonality when thinking strategically about
Hmm.
provinces, and that is that the norm is that there is an advantage if you um, get a job offer,
Hmm.
but there's also an advantage if you studied in the province
Hmm.
and subsequently work in the province. And the advantage is that in that scenario, if you studied in that province and then worked in that province, sometimes you only need 6 months of work
Hmm.
experience instead of the typical 1 year under the
Hmm.
federal express entry
Hmm.
slash Canada experience class
Hmm.
criteria.
Hmm.
But keep in mind, you need a job offer oftentimes for these smaller
Right.
provinces.
Right. And I've seen this a lot of times, specifically people who have basically studied in Canada before. Sometimes they come back. A lot of consultants say, okay, we are going to give you, or we're going to offer you a job, but then you have to pay a certain amount, and it will be like, uh, it won't be a real job. You have to land in Canada, and then you're on your own. Is this, a common practice that is happening, and should people avoid it, or go for it?
Yeah, so I see this often at the tail end when the damage
Hmm.
has been done,
Hmm.
where they are promised guaranteed immigration.
Hmm.
But what might have happened was either they might have paid, arguably, I think the rumor is like $50,000
Yeah.
for fake manufactured documents
Yeah.
to get a work permit,
Hmm.
and then it gets discovered,
Hmm.
and then they the penalty is 5 years misrepresentation
Hmm.
on the even though they were a victim.
Hmm.
So anytime there's a huge quantity of money,
Hmm.
then you have to be
Hmm.
skeptical, and not without being apprised of what particular pathway
Hmm.
is being availed. Then there's some danger.
Right. And one thing that I've heard is, commonly people say, IRCC checks student genuine intent. What does that term really mean? And could you just shed some light on it uh, in detail?
So this is when the person is applying initially for
Hmm.
their study permit.
Hmm.
So the idea is that this proposed course of study has to make sense
Hmm.
from the lens of, very specifically, how is this course of study in Canada
Hmm.
going to help this person's career
Hmm.
in their home country?
Right. Right.
That's the criteria. So, like an extreme example is if somebody is pursuing a Canadian law degree, it might be very challenging to justify how this would help them in their
Yeah.
career outside of Canada.
Right. Right. So, in your opinion, are there any misconceptions about the recent changes that have happened in 2025 that students should be aware of?
So I notice now with the social media,
Hmm.
when there's an announcement, it gets amplified. But I don't know Urdu, I don't know Hindi, and then my relatives who do,
Hmm.
they will send me this Urdu TikTok or Instagram saying there's this wonderful new program
Hmm.
that's very straightforward.
Hmm.
And then they show it to me, and I say, no, this is totally fake. So this is a particular problem in South Asian countries because the quantity of people is so large. So there are people with followings of 100,000 people spreading, these fake rumors.
Yeah, that is true. And specifically when AI has come up, there's a lot of misinformation going on. So when you get clients, right, do they, do they research on their own? And how many times you feel that they have gone through AI, they've asked so many questions, and AI has been, kind of, they think, replacement of a lawyer. But do you think that is something that is challenging for you?
In some cases, we can tell when the client has used AI, particularly when they have a very standard list of questions. The danger with the AI is that it's not good at dealing with cases where there's some kind of complexity. AI is very good at the fundamentals, which is, for example, what is sort of the standard document list for a study permit application, because it can scrape that from the IRCC website. So in other words, AI is good for summarizing what's on the IRCC website. But what people don't know is that for these more subjective elements, like the genuineness of intention to study, you can't readily find that through AI, because these are embedded in operational bulletins and immigration policy manuals, and that's where people get tripped up.
Also, do you think that clients putting their data when asking GPT, and lawyers also putting clients' data in when using GPT, do you think it's something that kind of makes the whole process a bit insecure? Because in my world, which is tech, I know that they store data and they train on it.
This is a huge problem. Our regulators, they always caution us, saying you have to protect client confidentiality, which means you have to anonymize things, or only use AI, for example, to in a way where you're not inputting client data. For that very reason that you're mentioning, because it's being used to train.
That's exactly. So how are you tackling with that? Do you think within your firm, do you have if a client comes, does he feel secure enough to give you data? And then how do you ensure that within your firm, this does not happen?
So in our firm, then we try not to use AI except for maybe generic information, such as doing, for example, our independent legal research, let's say cases, and then using those cases in AI. And those cases are obviously not about a particular client. They're published cases. And trying to look for patterns and arguments based on a synthesis of those cases for this. And the other way is simply taking the notes of the client interaction and then anonymizing that in some way or other, and then using parts of that with AI, maybe combined with legal research.
Right. I also know that you have a social. You are very active on social media, and you put a lot of shorts, which is a great thing, because I don't see many lawyers actually do that. Do you think it's bringing an impact, and is it something that actually helps you generate clients, and then obviously it helps gives more value to the people who are listening to you every now and often?
And in my view, it's not a source for direct leads necessarily. Because, for example, if we look at TikTok or Instagram, it's people who are just casually scrolling, right? It's not like Google, where people have a mission to look for something. But it does show that this is a real live law firm with a lawyer,
Hmm.
except the one or two times where people, which is kind of funny, they said, "Are you AI?" Which is kind of funny, and I have to say, "No, no, I'm a real person."
Yeah, because you have a very particular soft accent. Uh, that I honestly, when I saw your video first, I also thought that maybe this is AI, but it's that's something very positive about you. I really appreciate that. Um, so now in this scenario, looking forward to, let's say, 5 years, um, what do you think is going to be the future of immigration in general in Canada? And should people pursue it? And then how are you going to, with the evolving future, what do you think is the main goal immigration lawyers should have? And yeah, how they can help people using the technology and anything else that you have in mind?
So the immigration landscape for the next 5 years, if we look at, for example, the immediate 2 or 3 years, the writing on the wall is official. They are going to reduce the number of temporary
Hmm.
residents, and the pathways for permanent residency are going to be based on the short and medium term labor market
Hmm.
needs of Canada.
Hmm.
So that's going to be plumbers, electricians on the one hand, and physicians and allied healthcare workers
Hmm.
on the other hand.
Hmm.
If we predict a little bit,
Hmm.
maybe let's say 3 to 5 years,
Hmm.
uh, it's everything is expanding so rapidly. My assumption is, I mean, unfortunately, we're going through erratic world events on a daily basis
Hmm.
right now,
Yeah, exactly.
and
Exactly.
where those events are skewing pessimistic, but
Hmm.
I don't think we should be that pessimistic because
Yeah.
this. I'm hoping this is temporary.
Yeah.
These
Yeah.
changes.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, so the next maybe 3 to 5 years, there will be a bit more openness,
Hmm.
uh, due in part to the fact that demographics are shifting, even in developing countries where we
Hmm.
still need young people with
Yeah,
skills. Right.
that's true. That's true. Very, very important. So, my last question would be, and would be the closing question actually, and then actually I have one more thing that to ask. Let's suppose a student wants to, or the parent wants to contact you. Um, do you offer free consultations or do you have paid consultations? And what do you typically charge so that they have a clear mind that if they come in contact with you, they should have a clear expectation?
Yeah, so for our firm,
Hmm.
we have the 30-minute consultation for 210 Canadian dollars,
Right.
which is a video consultation,
Hmm.
which is typical for visas, and the more expensive one is for like complicated cases for
Hmm.
1 hour for $510. Right.
Right. Right. So that's great. So my final question is, if you could tell your younger self one thing about building a successful practice, what that might be.
For the younger self,
Yeah.
it's basically develop emotional intelligence,
Hmm.
and emotional intelligence means uh, you're not in it for the money. You're developing a genuine empathy
Hmm.
for the person you're serving,
Yeah.
and try to put yourself in their shoes.
Hmm.
Because if you could cultivate that skill, the person will realize it, and then they'll say, "Oh yeah, we're on the same team. We have the same goal."
Right. Right. That's such a beautiful thing. Thank you, Mr. Max, for giving us time, and I had a lovely, conversation with you, and I hope a lot of people are going to find this very, very helpful in making the right decisions.
Always, it was a pleasure. Thank you for having me on and the opportunity to speak. Right.